The distinctive crack of gunfire echoed across the barren mountains of Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, 2009. Radio chatter crackled through the static, urgent and desperate. Ghost Zero One to base camp. We've been compromised. Coordinates were wrong. Ghost Zero Three and O Five are down. Request immediate air support. The transmission died in a burst of static, replaced by the hollow sound of automatic weapons fire and the distant thump of mortar rounds. Then silence. Fort Benning, Georgia glowed golden in the early morning light 5 years later. The annual marksmanship competition had drawn hundreds of spectators, active duty soldiers, veterans, and families gathered to witness America's finest warriors demonstrate their skills. The air hummed with anticipation as competitors inspected their weapons with practiced precision. Colonel James Miller, a weathered 70-year-old former Special Forces commander, surveyed the range with sharp blue eyes that had seen more combat than most men could imagine. His campaign hat cast a shadow over features carved by decades of service, from Vietnam to the First Gulf War. The competition was his brainchild, a tradition that honored the best marksmen America's military had to offer. "Quite the turnout this year," remarked Range Safety Officer Parker, a stocky 62-year-old veteran who'd been running ranges since Desert Storm. Miller nodded. "Best we've had. Got teams from across the board: SEALs, Green Berets, Rangers, Delta." The crowd's attention focused on firing Lane 1, where Lieutenant Michael Dawson of SEAL Team 4 conducted his final equipment check. At 35, Dawson carried himself with the unmistakable confidence of a decorated warrior. 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, and a chest full of medals that he never discussed. His SR-25 semi-automatic sniper rifle gleamed in the morning sun, a .308 precision instrument capable of 1 MOA accuracy at 800 yards. Dawson's team surrounded him like a royal entourage. Brian Hayes, the team's social media-savvy communication specialist, filmed their preparations for his 50,000 Instagram followers. Frank Chen, their weapons expert, methodically inspected each round before handing them to Dawson. Thomas Brooks handled logistics, while David Rivera, their rookie, observed everything with eager attention. 5 years running, Dawson reminded them, just loud enough for nearby competitors to hear. And this year won't be any different. Hayes grinned, adjusting his camera. 40 confirmed kills in Fallujah in Helmand Province. Nobody touches that. The crowd parted like water and conversation faltered as someone unexpected approached the registration table. A small woman in standard-issue maintenance coveralls walked with a slight limp, her hands visibly trembling as she signed her name. Sarah Thompson, her name badge read. Maintenance Division. What the crowd didn't see was how Sarah's day had begun at 0430 hours. In the dim light of her sparse quarters, she followed a precise routine: shower, uniform, and finally the specialized nerve medication. Her hands shook as she administered the third-generation neurological treatment initially developed for injured Special Forces operators. The tremor, a constant companion that made even simple tasks a challenge. She'd retrieved her rifle from the disposal bin where it was scheduled for destruction. Barrel warped, stock cracked, trigger mechanism warned of dangerous tolerance levels, perfect for her purposes. Dawson noticed her now, his expression darkening. He strode toward the registration table, every inch the alpha predator. "What's this?" he demanded of Colonel Miller. "Sir, with all due respect, this is a professional competition, not some exhibition for the support staff." Sarah didn't respond, merely adjusted her grip on the battered rifle. Those with trained eyes might have noticed something unusual. The way she checked the chamber wasn't the movement of an amateur, but the smooth brass check taught to elite operators. Parker frowned, catching the motion. 20 years running ranges, and he knew the difference between a novice and something else entirely. Colonel Miller started to respond when Lieutenant Colonel Robert Harrison from Defense Intelligence approached, whispering something that made Miller's expression shift subtly. Harrison, 58, had the unremarkable appearance of a man designed to be forgotten, but the insignia on his uniform and the security clearance it represented commanded immediate respect. Shadowback, Kandahar 2009, was all Miller caught before Harrison stepped back, his message delivered. Nearby, Captain Laura Wells from the Judge Advocate General's Corps observed quietly, her notebook open, her eyes missing nothing. Dawson wasn't finished. "Look at that piece of garbage she's carrying. It's an insult to what we do here." "Regulation 4.3.2, Sarah said, her voice soft but carrying an unmistakable authority. "Any service rifle capable of chambering standard NATO rounds is permitted, regardless of condition." The SEAL team erupted in mockery. "Did you read that in a manual while cleaning the latrines?" Frank Chen called out, drawing laughs from the gathering crowd. "Leave her alone." The voice belonged to Private Emily Martinez, barely 6 months into her first deployment. "She has a right to compete." Brian Hayes turned his camera toward Martinez. "Looks like the janitors have to stick together," he sneered. "Enough," Colonel Miller intervened. "The competition begins in 10 minutes. First round, precision shooting, 10 rounds, 100 meters, 2 minutes." As competitors moved to their assigned lanes, Dawson deliberately bumped into Sarah, sending her ammunition spilling across the concrete. "Oops," he said with manufactured innocence. "Slippery fingers today." Sarah knelt to collect her rounds, and veterans in the crowd exchanged glances. She didn't grab randomly. She inspected each round with practiced efficiency, a habit formed when a single bad cartridge meant the difference between life and death. At lane 15, Sarah unfolded her shooting mat with methodical precision. Corners first, then center, checking for debris that might affect stability. She assembled a field-expedient rifle support system using her pack and ammo box that compensated for wind drift, barrel harmonics, and the specific ballistic characteristics of her warped barrel. "What the hell is she building, a fort?" Thomas Brooks whispered to Dawson. "Probably saw it in a movie," Dawson replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Something about her preparations nagged at his tactical instincts. "Range is hot," Parker announced. "Shooters, you have 2 minutes. Fire when ready." The crack of rifles filled the air as competitors began firing immediately. Dawson's team performed admirably, tight groupings appearing in the 9 and 10 rings, the product of thousands of hours of training and millions in equipment. Sarah didn't fire. She lay perfectly still, her trembling hands somehow steady on the rifle. 10 seconds passed. 20. 30. "Hey, maintenance, the loud noises scare you?" Hayes called out, drawing laughter. Those who understood marksmanship realized she was reading the wind, not using the obvious flags, but the subtle indicators. Heat shimmer off the concrete, dust motes in the air, the way a piece of paper fluttered near the target line. At 45 seconds, she fired her first shot. The electronic scoring system registered immediately. 10 ring, dead center. Her second shot followed. Another perfect hit, so close to the first that they appeared as one slightly enlarged hole. By her fifth shot, creating a single ragged hole in the center of the target, the entire range had fallen silent, except for the sound of gunfire. Even Dawson lowered his rifle, watching through his scope as Sarah placed shot after perfect shot despite her visibly trembling hands. The electronic scoring system, originally developed for special operations training assessment, told a story that defied logic. Perfect trigger control despite visible tremor. Shot placement that accounted for a barrel warp that should make accuracy impossible. "Holy," Parker breathed, looking at the data on his monitor. "She's compensating for a 3.7-inch drift at 100 meters in real time with no scope adjustments." Lieutenant Colonel Harrison had moved closer, his expression unreadable as he texted rapidly on a secure phone. Ghost pattern confirmed. PL 47209. Sarah fired her final round, another perfect hit, and safed her rifle. Total time, 1 minute 47 seconds. Perfect score, 100 out of 100. The silence that followed was deafening. Equipment malfunction, Dawson declared, his voice too loud in the quiet. The scoring system must be off. System's working fine, Parker replied, running a diagnostic. I can show you the high-speed footage. Colonel Miller approached Sarah's station, studying her with newfound intensity. Maintenance division, correct? Sarah nodded, those trembling hands methodically breaking down her position. Interesting technique, Miller said carefully. Not standard Army. No, sir, Sarah replied. It's not. As Miller walked away, Dawson noticed Frank and Thomas exchanging worried glances before Frank stepped away, phone in hand. Something about their behavior triggered the instinct that had kept Dawson alive through 5 combat tours, the sense that something wasn't right. For a brief moment, as competitors prepared for the second round, Sarah's mind drifted back. Afghanistan, 2009. Dirt raining down as rounds impacted the trench wall above her. Her hands steady then, guiding her team through the chaos. 6 operators moving as one, a symphony of violence and precision in a mission that officially never happened, led by women who officially weren't there. At that time, female operators in direct combat roles were still prohibited under official policy. But in the shadows of America's longest war, rules bent to accommodate necessity, the Ghost Squadron operated where conventional forces couldn't, did what acknowledged units wouldn't. Rapid fire round in 5 minutes, Parker announced, breaking Sarah's reverie. 30 rounds in 30 seconds. Magazine changes required. Frank Chen had returned, his complexion noticeably paler. He whispered something to Dawson that made the SEAL commander glance sharply at Sarah. I heard maintenance here applied for SEAL training once, Chen announced loudly. Got rejected before the first day. Some people just can't accept their limitations. Sarah said nothing, merely checked her magazines. Again, veterans noticed how she examined feed lips for microscopic burrs, tested spring tension, arranged them in specific order. Her trembling hands performed a ritual born of countless repetitions in places where a bad magazine meant death. As competitors took their positions, those watching closely noticed something about Sarah's wrist, a carbon fiber brace that contained military-grade nerve stabilization technology. Originally developed by DARPA for combat surgeons operating under fire, the device compensated for tremors up to 8 Hz frequency, allowing precise motor control despite permanent neurological damage. Shooters ready, Parker called out. Stand by. Fire! The range erupted with gunfire. The SEALs shot fast, controlled pairs. The standard military technique. 2 shots, assess. 2 shots, assess. Professional, competent, effective. Sarah's shooting was different. Where others fired in pairs, she fired in flowing streams that followed the Mozambique drill pattern. 2 to the body, 1 to the head. The hallmark of close protection teams and elite counterterrorism units. Her trembling hands found stability in motion, each shake becoming part of her shooting rhythm rather than fighting against it. Her magazine changes happened so quickly, many observers missed them. The empty magazine hadn't hit the ground before a new one was seated, and she was firing again. A technique taught to operators who might need to reload under the most extreme circumstances. When the electronic scoring system displayed the results, Sarah had again achieved a perfect score. Every round had struck with tactical precision. Center mass for targets at 50 meters, headshots at 75, and the Mozambique pattern at 100. Colonel Miller was now engaged in a tense conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Harrison and Captain Wells from JAG. Their voices were low, but Dawson caught fragments. Confirmed Ghost Squadron. But Operation Shadowback, financial irregularities. Something cold settled in Dawson's stomach. Ghost Squadron was whispered about in SEAL circles, an elite unit that officially didn't exist, composed of operators who officially weren't deployed. An Operation Shadowback. That was the mission his team had been pulled from at the last minute 5 years ago. The mission where their replacements had been ambushed and killed. As the competitors prepared for the moving targets round, Dawson approached Sarah. His earlier mockery had hardened into something more desperate. "Before the next round," he said, loud enough for others to hear, "how about a little hand-to-hand demonstration? After all, any real operator needs to be able to fight without a weapon." "That's not part of the competition," Parker started to say. "Just a friendly demonstration," Dawson insisted. "Show these recruits some combat techniques." Sarah set her rifle down carefully. "I didn't come here for this." "Then why did you come?" Dawson demanded. The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. "If the lieutenant needs this," Sarah said quietly, "I'll oblige." They cleared space in front of the bleachers. Dawson stripped down to his t-shirt, revealing muscled arms covered in SEAL tattoos. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd won dozens of combatives matches, using size and strength to overpower opponents. Sarah simply removed her maintenance jacket, revealing a plain brown t-shirt underneath. She didn't stretch or warm up, just stood with those trembling hands at her sides. Dawson charged with a bull rush designed to use his size advantage, reaching for Sarah's shoulders to execute a takedown. She wasn't there. A small sidestep at the last moment let his momentum carry him past. As he passed, her trembling hand made minimal contact with his elbow, redirecting his charge into an awkward stumble. Recovering quickly, Dawson threw a roundhouse punch that would have felled most opponents. Sarah ducked just enough for it to pass over her head. No wasted movement, no dramatic evasion, just efficient conservation of energy. "Stop dancing and fight," Dawson snarled, embarrassed. He pressed forward with controlled combinations, using his reach advantage. Sarah gave ground, not retreating but moving in a circular pattern, making him work for every attack. Her footwork was perfect despite her hand's constant tremor. Frustration mounting, Dawson feinted with a left jab and threw a right cross that caught Sarah's shoulder. Sensing advantage, he grabbed her t-shirt for leverage. The fabric tore with a sound that seemed unnaturally loud. The rip exposed Sarah's chest from collar to sternum, revealing an intricate tattoo that silenced the crowd instantly. A massive black eagle, wings spread wide, talons gripping a sniper rifle. The eagle's hollow eyes spoke of loss and sacrifice. Each major feather contained small initials worked into the design: CM, TK, RS, AD, JL, ST, 6 names, 6 feathers. Below the eagle, stark military lettering read, Ghost Squadron, and beneath that, Nunquam Oblitus, never forgotten. Colonel Miller's face went pale. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison stepped forward. Several of the newly arrived observers snapped to attention involuntarily. "Ghost Eagle," someone whispered, and the words rippled through the crowd. Dawson released the torn shirt, staring at the tattoo with dawning horror as recognition set in. Because everyone in Special Operations knew about Ghost Squadron. They were legends. Operators who took missions that couldn't be acknowledged, with a perfect success record until the day they didn't come back. "Captain Sarah Thompson," Colonel Miller announced, his voice carrying the weight of official recognition. "Former commander, Ghost Squadron, Task Force 88. 127 high-value targets eliminated during Operation Enduring Freedom." He turned to Dawson, whose face had drained of color. "The unit that replaced SEAL Team 4 on Operation Shadowback after you were pulled out. They were betrayed. 6 went in. 1 came out." Captain Laura Wells stepped forward, her JAG insignia catching the light. "Captain Thompson," she said formally, "I've been investigating financial irregularities surrounding Operation Shadowback, specifically how enemy forces knew exactly where your team would be inserted. The crowd's attention shifted as Wells continued. Financial records show unusual deposits to certain accounts 5 years ago. Encrypted communications were recovered, but never fully investigated, all traced back to the SEAL unit. Frank Chen's hand moved toward his sidearm, but before he could draw, Sarah crossed the space between them with fluid speed. Her trembling hand closed over his, keeping the weapon holstered. "Don't," she said quietly. "It won't change anything." "You knew," Chen gasped. "You knew and you came here anyway." "I suspected," Sarah corrected. "My team's last transmission mentioned concerns about intelligence security. After I recovered, I requested assignment here as maintenance. Nobody looks at maintenance." "You've been investigating us for months," Dawson realized, understanding dawning in his eyes. Sarah nodded. "The details Chen mentioned about my supposed rejection from SEAL training, information that only exists in classified files, the same files that contained Operation Shadowback's mission parameters." Thomas Brooks broke, his face crumpling. "We didn't mean for anyone to die," he stammered. "Just information for money. They weren't supposed to know exact coordinates. They weren't supposed to be waiting with mortars." Military police materialized from the crowd, moving with practiced efficiency to take Chen and Brooks into custody. "Specialist Frank Chen, Petty Officer Thomas Brooks," Wells announced formally. "You're under arrest for violation of the Espionage Act, conspiracy resulting in the deaths of 6 special operations personnel, and treason against the United States." The arrests happened quickly, professionally. Chen didn't resist, seeming almost relieved it was over. Brooks broke down completely, sobbing about debts and pressure. Dawson remained frozen, his world collapsing around him. 2 members of his elite unit, men he'd trusted with his life, had sold information that got 6 operators killed, and for 5 years he'd celebrated victories built on their betrayal. "The drone round," Parker said into the heavy silence. "Do we continue the competition?" Sarah looked down at her torn shirt, then at her broken rifle leaning against the bench. "Might as well finish what I started." Private Martinez offered her own jacket, which Sarah accepted with a nod of thanks. The drone operators nervously prepared their equipment. 5 small quadcopters lifted off, immediately beginning evasive patterns. They moved in 3 dimensions, using their small size and agility to present nearly impossible targets. "Current record is 3 drones in 45 seconds, Parker announced, set by a 2-man special operations team. Sarah picked up her broken rifle and took her stance. Unlike previous rounds, she stood unsupported, rifle raised despite her trembling hands. The first drone swept across at 40 mph, 30 feet up, zigzagging randomly. Sarah fired once. The drone exploded in a shower of plastic and electronics. The second was diving toward the earth when her shot caught it mid-descent. The third tried to hide behind a barrier, just the tips of its rotors visible. Sarah's round punched through the barrier, striking where the body would be based on pure spatial calculation. The fourth and fifth worked in tandem, crossing paths to confuse targeting. Sarah fired twice in rapid succession. Both drones fell. Total time, 11.7 seconds. All 5 drones destroyed. The record hadn't just been broken, it had been obliterated. Sarah lowered her rifle, safed it, and set it down gently. The crowd remained silent, processing what they'd witnessed. Not just marksmanship, but a display of skill that transcended conventional understanding. Later that evening, after the competition had concluded and the crowd dispersed, Dawson found Sarah at the maintenance shop, preparing to return to her routine as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "I need to say something," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "No," Sarah interrupted. "You don't." "I do," Dawson insisted. "My team 5 years ago, they told us another unit took a high-risk mission so we could stand down. Said that team didn't make it back. They never told us who. Never told us about Ghost Squadron." Sarah was quiet, letting him continue. I've been walking around for 5 years acting like my SEAL trident makes me better than everyone else. And the whole time I've been alive because real warriors died in my place. Warriors I spent today mocking. You couldn't have known, Sarah said. That's not the point, Dawson replied sharply. I shouldn't have needed to know. Basic respect shouldn't depend on someone's resume or the patches they wear. Sarah studied him, those trembling hands steady in their purpose. What do you want from me, Lieutenant? Forgiveness? I want to know how to make it right, Dawson said. How to honor what your team sacrificed. For the first time since the range, Sarah's expression softened. Stop being the soldier you've been. Start being the one they died to save. That's how you honor them. Across the base, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison sat with Colonel Miller, sharing a bottle of bourbon that had seen them through countless difficult conversations since Vietnam. She's something else, Miller said. Changed how I think about strength. Harrison nodded. Times change. Back in our day, women weren't allowed near combat. Now some of the best operators I've seen wear ponytails under their helmets. Evolution of the profession, Miller agreed. The enemy doesn't care about gender. Only results. What happens to her now? Harrison asked. Miller swirled his bourbon. She found what she came for. Justice for her team. Closure, maybe. But closure wasn't what waited for Sarah Thompson in her sparse quarters that night. As she sat alone, studying the photograph of Ghost Squadron, 6 operators in their prime, ready for a mission they wouldn't all return from, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. The message was brief. Kandahar was a trap. Vienna is real. Operation Lazarus activated. M. Sure Martinez. Ghost 3. The demolitions expert whose body had been identified by DNA alone. Sarah stared at the message, her hands trembling worse than usual as possibilities cascaded through her mind. Operation Lazarus, the classified protocol for reactivating deep cover operatives, believed killed in action. A contingency plan she never expected to see implemented. She typed a single-word response. When? The answer came immediately. 72 hours. Heal first, then we fly again. Sarah deleted the messages but couldn't suppress a slight smile. She moved to her closet, unlocking a hidden compartment containing a carefully maintained tactical kit she hadn't touched in 5 years. Her trembling fingers traced the Ghost Squadron insignia on the shoulder. The investigation was over. The traitors caught, but the mission, it seemed, was just beginning. As dawn approached, Sarah Thompson, maintenance supervisor, ghost warrior, broken soldier with the steadiest aim at Fort Benning, prepared herself for what would come next. Her reflection showed a small woman with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. The tremor would always be there, the price of bringing her brothers and sisters home. But as she'd proven on the range, broken things could still shoot straight. Sometimes they shot straighter than anything whole ever could. Outside her window, Fort Benning's lights flickered like earthbound stars. The base never truly slept. There was always someone on duty, someone training, someone preparing for wars that might never come or might arrive tomorrow. Sarah checked her go bag one final time, ensuring everything was in place for when the call came. The specialized wrist brace, the custom medication, the false identification documents. Ghosts don't die, she whispered to the pre-dawn darkness. They just wait for the next mission. And somewhere in Vienna, answers waited. The Ghost Squadron story wasn't over. It was just beginning again. As Colonel James Miller would later write in his classified memoirs, the most dangerous weapon in America's arsenal has never been our technology, our firepower, or even our nuclear deterrent. It's always been our capacity to produce men and women willing to stand between their loved home and war's desolation. And sometimes the most lethal among them are the ones you'd never notice until it's too late.